You want me to do the gavel again? I'm calling the meeting of the Planning Commission to order for, what is today, January 22nd? Excuse me, I've got the wrong papers in front of me. Thanks so much for being with us this evening. Staff, can we have a roll call, please?
Commissioner Woodward,
Present.
Commissioner Sai,
Here.
Commissioner Williams, Vice Chair Amir,
Here.
Chair DeFever.
Here. Thank you very much. Before we turn to the noticed agenda items for the evening, we have an opportunity for general public comment, if there is any. And that's if you wish to address anything that's not appearing on tonight's agenda. Anyone would like in the room, if you want to raise your hand or simply come up to the microphone, anything that's not on the agenda for tonight. And do we have anyone online, Chris?
No, we do not.
Okay, so moving forward, do we have a staff briefing?
I have nothing tonight, actually. Amazingly enough, right? Commissioner Woodward's looking at me like, really? Yeah.
Not
nothing
even
tonight.
a happy new year.
Oh, yeah. Okay. That's right. Happy New Year. I'm so happy to see everybody here. We have a full quorum and we have a new chair. So it's going to be fun. That's all I have.
Well,
Thank you.
thank you. Happy New Year to you as well. Do we have any general questions from the Planning Commission about items that are not on the agenda? Seeing none, we will move on to the minutes. We will consider adoption of the minutes from the December 11th, 2024 regular Planning Commission meeting. Any commissioners would like to make any comments about the minutes or possibly move to approve them if you found them acceptable?
So moved.
Second,
Okay. We have a motion and a second. Let's do a roll call vote. Daniel Amir, Commissioner. Amir?
I'll abstain. I wasn't present.
Okay, Commissioner Woodward?
Yes, aye.
Aye,
Approved.
and I also vote aye. So you've got 4 ayes and 1 abstention. And the minutes have passed. Okay.
Aye.
Aye. Thank you.
sorry.
Oh, should we, oh, they moved and seconded, so I figured it was redundant to also get ayes from them. If you'd like me to, I will. Does that matter going forward?
Yeah, if you're doing a roll call, everyone should get a roll call.
Got it. Okay, I will do that. Okay, moving on to our action items. Our first action item for the, well, you know what? I'm going to change the order, which is something the Planning Commission can do because action item 2, PH2, we are actually looking at continuing. So in order to get that, in order to not forget about that after we address PH1, I think we should do that now. That is the conditional use permit to amend an existing conditional use permit related to parking spaces and to review and amend the parking operation and consider the use of the valet service for all of the public. And this is for the Caprice restaurant. It has been suggested that we continue it to the February 12th meeting. Well, wait, this says Design Review Board meeting. Is that a typo? That's a typo. Okay. And if I understand this correctly, we have to vote on that continuance and that date. Is that correct? Or no?
You can, yes. Yes, you should. And actually, that'd be good because if there's anybody here in the audience that doesn't know about this continuance, it'd be good to
And you
note
can
that
open
now.
Public comment, you know. Open public comment, take public comment if any.
Okay, well, if anyone is here to speak about the conditional use permit concerning the parking spaces and the valet service for the Caprice, let's open that up for public comment. I am not seeing any motion in the audience. Anyone online, Chris?
There are no comments from Zoom.
Okay, so I will close public comment and then come back to the Planning Commission for consideration about whether we'd like to move that to the February 12th meeting.
On the staff's recommendation, I will move to continue that to February 12th.
I'll second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second, so let's do the roll call vote. Let me start with Commissioner Amir.
Aye.
Aye. Commissioner Woodward,
Aye.
and I also vote aye. Commissioner Sai
Aye.
and Commissioner
Aye.
Williams. All right, it's unanimous. We shall move that to the February 12th, continued to the February 12th meeting. Okay, having that out of the way, let's move on to the public hearing for PH1, which is 1600 Mar West. And this is the review of the conditional use permit regarding the pickleball activities at the Tiburon Peninsula Club. And we have the receipt of a report from the operator of the club, and we have an opportunity here for the club and the planning commissioners and the public to discuss the pickleball activities. And if necessary, we will provide further direction to the town staff. So let's go ahead and get into that issue. I think the first thing is the applicant's presentation. Or do we have a staff report? I think that's first.
I'm happy to have the applicant go first, but I just wanted to kind of lay out what we're trying to do tonight, which is we're looking at asking the planning commission to accept this update of the pickleball activities at the Tiburon Peninsula Club. As many of you remember, in March of 2024, we came before the planning commission and requested that we review this, and there were conditions that were placed upon the club to reduce some of the noise impacts that the public, the adjacent neighbors felt. And this was intended to be 180 days past that time. Unfortunately, I was out for an extended period of time. We had a staffing shortage due to that. And so, but I also think it was a good amount of time for us to see how the operation was going and to allow the club to do the improvements that they could to reduce some of the noise impacts. And so there were a couple of requested changes that the planning commission wanted to see to figure out how we could reduce this noise kind of impact along the way. And, you know, I laid them out in the staff report. There was a roof structure, modeling of the acoustic barriers, relocation of the pickleball courts, and noise measurements for the properties located uphill. So I would say that for the last 10 months, the applicant has focused on improvements at the court and the sound walls. And I have not received any complaints to date. They also have reduced their operating hours as was required by the planning commission. So I haven't heard anything from any residents. That doesn't mean there aren't any concerns. I just have not received those phone calls. They did not do the roof structure. It's a big economic investment that they intend to look at in the future for enclosing a structure. But at this time, that was not completed. And relocation of the pickleball courts was not an option because of some of the operations like the Challenger that happens every year and some other events that happen at the other courts. So moving that and then restriping for any kind of competition was not something that they could look at from both an operational and a fiscal part. There is a noise study, and I believe that the noise consultants are here tonight to speak to that. I am not a noise expert. So what we really wanted you to do is to look at the report, hear from the neighbors and from the community about whether or not some of the things that have been installed and the hours are working to help some of the issues that we heard about before, and accept the report. At this time, I know that there were a number of letters and requests for you to consider hours of operation and changes to that. That was not part of the noticing. And so we would suggest to the planning commission, unless they felt very strongly, that we bring any type of operational changes to them at a later date. Because I did not notice the changes to any hours.
And even if you feel strongly about it, it was agendized. I mean,
that's right.
it was agendized such that you receive the report, you know, listen to the public testimony, gather the data. And if you would like to make modifications to the conditional use permit from there, you can direct staff to bring back an item to consider those specific modifications. But for today, we're receiving the report.
And hearing public testimony.
No matter how strongly. that's.
And taking
that's all.
public testimony.
And taking
So
public
just
testimony,
Quite a few
yes.
people here.
Thank you.
Hey. All right, with that, I think we are clear.
I was wondering, I just had a
a
couple
question.
clarifying questions. Yeah, just 2 points of clarification. One's on the roof structure, just refreshing my memory. We didn't request that a roof structure be installed. We had requested that there be some analysis,
Right.
potential analysis of hypothetically if there a roof structure would, that
Would
be
reduce
factored
the
into
levels.
noise study. Okay. And then secondly, in terms of I understand what's been noticed for tonight. So just to clarify, if it's unclear for folks, my understanding was that the TPC had thought about expanding hours, but had opted not to make that request at this time.
So that was the information that I had previously. I believe there
Ah.
will be some data and some discussion about that tonight based
Okay.
on what I've received in letters. And so I just wanted to sort of let the public know, let TPC know that we don't have that ability to do that tonight based on the Brown Act and the noticing that took place for this project. We can certainly get directed to come back at the next meeting. We certainly can do that.
Right. Okay, so hours expanded or reduced have not noticed for this evening. Okay. Great, thank you.
Okay, any other commissioner questions? Being none, I think we can move to the applicant's presentation. Is the applicant here, the Tiburon Peninsula?
Yes.
Ah, there you are, right in the front, right in front of me. Please take a seat at the microphone.
Please
and-
give me just one moment.
You have 20 minutes. You don't need to choose to use all of it, but you're totally welcome to.
Great. Great. Thank you. And thanks for the summary, Director. Can't believe it's been 10 months, but we've been working very hard and are excited actually to be back in front of you today and show you what we've done and where we're going with pickleball. So as our main ask today is the continued support of the pickleball use at the TPC. As the director referenced, there were some asks of us last March. So our presentation today is primarily focused on what we've done with those asks. With me today, I have a couple of other TPC members and board members, Samantha and then Scott at the end. And then Colin, if the white shirt, is our director of court sports. And then John, between Colin and Scott, is the acoustical consultant. Last time we were all put in the position of having to interpret these complicated rules and the codes. And so we flew John in today, and I think you'll be pleased with some of the information and data we've gathered to empower you to make a more informed decision from the data, the science side of it. So the main asks of us last time were to complete the voluntary sound containment measures that we'd already been working on. We'll share a little bit more about what we've done on that, but we not only completed it, we actually replaced some of the old materials because we determined there was something that was even better at mitigating the sound even further below the standards that are laid out in the town codes. We were asked to measure in more detail. So again, that's why John's today, but you'll see we actually took specific measurements of sound at some of our closest neighbors so we could really see what the impact is there. And we were asked to engage. So we'll talk a little bit about the engagement with the neighbors, with the town. I think we've been continuing to build a better relationship. Obviously, it's always challenging. You all know better than anyone. Trying to put together the neighbors when there's a issue that they're trying to mitigate. But I think hopefully our neighbors will say that they've seen some improvements, and probably the fact that there haven't been letters doesn't mean that they're pleased, but that it's working. All right, let's into the next slide. Okay. Am I pointing in the right place? Can we pause our time? Okay, thank you. Yeah, let me know if I'm pointing to the wrong place. The first slide worked.
I turned that. That was my first soiree into my tech knowledge. Nothing, the thing isn't really. Wait. This is not good.
So. Push too hard. Okay.
I don't know.
Yeah.
I'm just gonna use it on a mouse. Not pitching anything else, sorry for that header, but. You just let me know when I need to move the screen for you.
Thank you.
Able to control it.
So my name is Colin Braun. I'm the director of court sports at Tiburon Peninsula Club. I've worked at a number of country clubs that have worked with pickleball, and there are some common threads going on here at TPC that are also going on across the country. As I'm sure many of you know, pickleball is the fastest growing sport in the United States. It has higher participation rates than tennis, golf, and basketball. It's growing, it's popular among all ages. It's a cross between tennis, badminton, ping pong. It's very easy to learn. I can tell you with experience that tennis takes much longer to learn and to play successfully than does pickleball. I think we can move on to the next slide, please. TPC's been around since 1948. We have about 700 families and 175 senior members. Approximately 2,000 members reside on the peninsula. We have a flexible and inviting guest policy, amenity for recruiting and retaining police and firefighters. And it's the premier athletic and social club in Marin. And it's good property value for property values and the businesses locally. We also are one of the largest employers in the town of Tiburon. And we host some pretty major events like the Challenger, which brings in plenty of entertainment and revenue for local businesses. And we have about a 4-to-1 ratio of TPC members who are physically capable of playing pickleball versus tennis. So much more accessible to a much larger demographic than tennis is. We have 4 courts with max capacity of 16 players on 4 courts. We've been playing there for about 4 years. We've had 0 complaints from neighbors in the last since the last meeting. TPC has invested approximately $165,000 to mitigate the disruption to the neighbors and has stationed an employee at the courts for a cost of roughly $67,000 a year. Our current schedule is Tuesdays through Saturdays, 9 a.m. to 5 p.m., Sundays, 10 a.m. to 2 p.m., and Mondays we are closed. There's no significant traffic impact with pickleball above and beyond what we already have at TPC. We have third-party studies, complies with the town's noise element standards. TPC is also in the early stages of discussion of the development of an indoor pickleball concept. I myself have worked at 2 other indoor locations with pickleball, and I find it not only to mitigate the sound, quite obviously, to the people outside of the building, but a superior way to play pickleball as there's no sun, no wind, no rain, much cleaner way to play the game indoors. And so we hope that that is on the horizon at TPC. And we have about 30% of our members play pickleball at TPC. The next slide, please. So yeah, Colin mentioned some of the $165,000 that we've spent on sound containment. In this picture, what you're seeing was what was existing. Oops, I'm sorry. Oh, it's working now. Oh, look. Okay. In this picture, I think, yeah, I can drive. This picture shows the old material, which was it was more of a flat surface, kind of a harder material that was reflecting the sound a little bit. And we acknowledge that even though we spend some money on that, that doesn't matter, that it was not the best material, or other materials were created at the time. So we also require our members, when they play, to use the quieter paddles. Certain paddles they have to be approved to use. And then we've staffed a person just to control the flow into the court. The other thing we did is when we did the modifications to the court, you can't really see it here, but over there, we put a locked gate to make it easier for our staff to control the use of pickleball. So at 5 o'clock, they're supposed to, and they've been, I think, pretty good about it, go and they're actually locked the courts off to where you'd have to climb the fences to play. So that's been our one mitigation effort of just being able to control the hours. But you can see this new material that we just put up. It's more of like a blanket or kind of a quilt. It's a softer feel, and the sound, we'll talk about with the actual quantifiable, it changes the sound. So yeah, so why don't I invite John up, if you could. Thank you. And then you push this button to just kind of show what we've done. Yeah. So right now we're at the map, so you're actually gonna go backwards. Okay. But I thought we should start at the map to show where we did the measurements.
Yeah. Okay.
You want me to drive?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, okay. So, my name is John Laverty. I'm with Venaclaus and Associates. I'm a principal there. It's great to meet the commissioners. Look forward to explaining some of this to you and try to make it a little clearer than what it maybe has been in the past. So in the, here's a map of what we have done and the measurements that have been conducted since the last time. So there were 4 locations that were requested by the commission. These are located as the NALs or notated as the NALs. So those have been measured. They were measured in September of 24. We also measured at the other 6 locations you see here, which are notated in the L versions, L1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. So I feel like we have a very good coverage of the sound level that is coming from the pickleball court and also what is happening ambient, and we can move forward. So let's first talk to what is the requirements in the city of Tiburon. So they define levels inside of their general plan. And the top one is the one that we're probably most concerned about. That shows the residential noise level break is at 60. That is an exterior noise level. And it's written in terms of metrics that are LDN, right in the center. You'll see it right below community there, LDN or CNEL. We have used the LDN because the LDN makes more sense in this particular case. But the LDN is a metric that is an average over 24 hours. So it is a 24-hour metric. The level at the exterior of the residential areas that's required is the 60. And you'll see that's the difference between normally acceptable and conditionally acceptable over at the right in the terminology. You want me to drive the
60 to
70? Yep. And then if you look down playgrounds, you'll see normally acceptable out to the level of 70 for an LDN. Okay, next. So the surface, the change in the surfaces is very important. Let me drive now. I'm gonna drive this piece, okay? The change in the surface is very important because it actually has an effect that you see. So this is the original condition. In the original condition, somebody hits the ball and that will go directly to a home. But you have a secondary effect, which is it hits the wall, bounces off this wall, and goes up to here. And what happens when we change the material on the wall, you have an effect here where this is now significantly more absorptive. And by significantly, the material that's there has what is called the noise reduction coefficient of 0.8. So that means it will absorb 80% of the energy that's coming from this reflection. So this is the same, no change, but this reflection is reduced by 80%. So you get less of the reflective impacts. I'll let you drive to the next slide. Okay. Okay. And so this is a little let me drive. Yeah. This is a little complicated, but I'm going to try to explain it in as simple terms as I can. So here is where the criteria sits, and this is on the pickleball courts. This is that 70 that you saw before. And these are the 60s that are all the residential areas. So that's the criteria. That's whether you comply or not. Here is the level that is the ambient. So this is without any pickleball. And you can see here, the best numbers to look at are L1, which are the pickleball court. You see the ambient is 52 and 49. This is, first number is September of 23. Second number is September of 24. You'll see with pickleball, they go up and they're both the same. So that tells me at least the measurements we did in 23 and 24 show that the pickleball energy is exactly the same. And then you'll see here, this is the LDN. This is actually what is the City of Tiburon requirement. These are average values over an hour of period time. And you'll see here, this is the actual requirement. And then that requirement is compared to the standard. Okay. So it's the same drill. This is September 23. This is September 24. Now I will make a point to the commission that all of these measurements, those in 24 were all recorded. So everything we have is recorded over the period of time that we measured. So if you take a position like L2, which is at one of the residents,
L2 is before one of the residents, right?
Yeah, if you look at this, it's right. Let me go back this way. Whoops, sorry.
I got you.
Oh, yeah, it's like now the controller. Yeah, the controller has a.
So yeah, the L1 is on the pickleball court.
Yeah.
So yeah, again, L1 is on the pickleball courts, L2, L3, and then get into
There.
L5, L6, L4. I got you.
Yeah.
They're in the
Okay.
residence.
Yep. And the next one is, yep, okay. So
Let me do that.
I was just doing an example. So this is only by example. You see here, the ambient at L2 is 50 and 49. And then with the pickleball activities in an hour, it's 53 and 50. And you'll see here, there's been a reduction of 3 dB with the change in material, 23 to 24. And you see it here, 23 to 24. So an actual reduction. Now, what I find interesting as the designer is the ambient noise level currently is 49, and with pickleball, it's 50. So what's happening is the pickleball activities add 1 dB to the actual ambient noise level, so not a lot. And then you'll see here's the combined level, and this has gone down to 55. So this is again the Tiburon requirement. That wasn't me. Tiburon requirements 60, and this location's 55, and you'll see a reduction of 2. So you'll see this common theme running through this, and the common theme is that before the changes, there was compliance. So all of these numbers complied before. After the changes, there continues to be compliance and they're reduced. And you'll see the reduction is here. So the reductions were significant. I normally would say 6 dB is very significant. About 3 dB should be noticeable. But reductions across the board. So the modification of the materials made the pickleball activity quieter at the receptor locations. And then I'll let you drive.
1, 2, 5, and 6, L5 and 6.
Oh, yeah.
And
So here we go. Go back to the map. Just for a second. I'll see if we can drive this thing or not.
That's not working again.
Okay, so it's one more after that one. It's 9, slide
Yeah,
9.
Keep going down, please.
Yeah, slide 9.
I think it's actually.
Yeah, 10, 11, 11. Yeah, it's deeper. Okay, there we go. I think the question was about if we have the split screen, it actually works pretty well for me. Yeah,
Okay.
you know,
use your screen. We're just trying to share over here. It's not.
yeah.
Oh, could you go back to that last slide?
Yeah.
Yeah.
The question
This
was,
is the
oh,
share screen one, so let me drive this one.
Yeah.
You drive it.
Okay,
well, the other one's not driving anymore.
we're not driving at all. Nothing's happening.
Staff, Dina, I think when you originally went to share it, you didn't actually share it. It gave you the options, what you share on Zoom, like there were 3 screens and you didn't click on anything. Instead, you opened it from the original program separately. So go back, click share screen again, perhaps. Or find the window that gives you the different screens you can share. There were options.
Yeah. So. It's like NAL2 and 5 and 6. So, yeah.
Go back into Zoom. Like click Zoom at the bottom.
Okay.
I see the feed is on the TV.
It's on this, it's on your screen on Zoom.
What's on the computer is on my screen, but not the presentation on the slide.
That's correct.
Yeah.
We can continue on this.
okay.
I mean, there's,
Yeah, we're
this
just,
might take a while, so let's just get to it.
We have to make sure the audience on Zoom is following. Let's see.
What's on TV.
Oh, okay,
Okay,
okay.
So.
do you want to start, do you want to continue on the small screen?
Yeah. let's-
Yeah.
Yeah, you guys can, the commissioners can all see that, so.
Yeah.
we can see it.
Which slide do you need from?
That's what I think we wanted right there with the map, because I think there was a question about L5 and L6.
Yeah, question came from the audience, but yeah, we just didn't, those were new readings that we did in 2024. That's why there's not data from 2023. And then the NAL 1 through 4 are the new sites of the residents, and we were really pleased with, you know, just walking up the hills, it sounded better to me, but actually seeing the quantifiable data improvement made our investment feel more justified.
Do you have a comparison, similar comparison for?
We have to pause on audience questions. You'll get a chance later, but right now it's just the floor is only for the applicant. So please hold that thought. Thank you.
And, you know, I'm sure you're gonna have more questions for John. We actually did, last time there were questions about trying to, even though the average is how the standard works in Tiburon, what are the peaks and valleys, and wanting to understand those. We didn't have good answers that last time. So now we actually have the data charted out with the peaks and the valleys, more interesting, the peaks, and actually audio recordings of those as well, which we can talk to. I think in the interest of time, Scott,
Yeah, I think I'll pass it. In general, I think what this shows, I've already concluded, which is the modification to the material inside of the court has significantly reduced the noise level into the community. And as we showed in 23, everything met the requirements in the city of Tiburon. And with the modification, they all still continue to show compliance, and they've all been reduced in level. And I'll pass it on.
Good evening. I'm Scott Miller. I'm a TPC board member, and I guess could you go to the very last slide? So, you know, I think there's a little bit of miscommunication between us and the director on whether or not we'd have an opportunity to ask for a modification in the hour. So I'm just going to kind of outline what our current view is. But I think, since March, when we were last in front of you, we really have made a lot of great positive progress. Number one, in terms of reducing the overall sound impact on the community and the neighbors, as well as just being much more proactive and having much more open dialogue and communication with our neighbors. Our last meeting was last Thursday with them. So we really are trying to do everything we can to obviously invest in all of the updated materials to reduce the sound and reduce the impact, and certainly, not just coordinate and communicate with the neighbors about our near-term plans for sound mitigation, but also our longer-term plans. And I think Matt alluded to that in his discussions. We have had discussions with the Parks and Open Space Committee about potentially developing a co-developed project, an indoor facility that could be used both for public use and TPC use. Those are still in kind of the formative stages, but as board members and as TPC members, we'd like nothing more than to have a permanent indoor solution that we could use that would eliminate the matter altogether. So we are working towards that. It's still in its formative stages, but that's definitely part of our long-term plan. And we shared that with the neighbors and they're fully supportive of that. In terms of the hours, I think it's important to kind of maybe take a step back and put it all into context. Our current CUP allows for tennis to be played on the lower courts from the hours of 8 a.m. till dusk, 7 days a week, throughout the year. When we applied for the initial pickleball amendment, we asked for slightly reduced hours from 9 a.m. to 7 p.m., 7 days a week. And then obviously in March, we received approval to play Tuesday through Saturday, 9 a.m. to 5 p.m., Sundays, 10 a.m. to 2 p.m. with no play on Mondays as discussed. And we've, obviously completely adhered to those guidelines. I think the feedback from the neighbors on the adjustments have been positive. I think they've really appreciated the adjusted schedule and as well as the lower overall noise. And really the impact of the change in sound material is very notable when you're on the courts. It's a much better experience. It's less echoey, less noisy. It really does have a huge impact. And, you see that in the numbers and just kind of the anecdotal experience is very positive as well. So from that, there are the feedback from the membership on the new hours is a little bit different. I mean, many members who are working 9 to 5, as many of us are now from the office of being recalled back into work. If you work a 9 to 5 job with the new hours, you really don't have any opportunity to play during the week. And if you've got active family who are involved in sports and other things on the weekends, your time there is also very limited. So what we're planning to propose tonight is effectively a seasonal adjustment to the hours that were approved at the last meeting. And by that, I mean, we're happy to have the 5 p.m. cutoff in the months where the days are short and daylight is limited, but we're asking for an additional stoppage time at 6:30 p.m. from March through October when the clocks have adjusted, when the days are longer. The average sunset, I think, is between 7:30 or so, with the latest, in June and July being as late as 8:30, 9 o'clock. So we're asking for a seasonal adjustment so we can have the opportunity for folks who work 9 to 5 to play a little bit longer into the evening when the days are longer and when there's more daylight. And combined, we think this represents a fair and reasonable solution for the folks at TPC who are members, who are enthusiastic about playing, as well as the members of the community that we're trying to work with in terms of, allowing them to have time to be outdoors and enjoy the outdoor space when there's plenty of daylight to do so.
Just also to note, we are asking for Mondays back, particularly with Monday holidays. We had a lot of, I hear it quite a bit as a board member at TPC, but from people that can't play on MLK when they get that window of time to play. This last Monday was a little tough. And then Sunday until 3 p.m.
And then one other footnote there, it's also worth noting that the Ranch Lagoon courts are currently approved for pickleball play from 9 a.m. to 6 p.m., 7 days a week with no sound abatement. And the location's actually a bit closer to the surrounding neighborhood. So with that, happy to answer or entertain any questions.
Okay, do we have any commissioner questions?
Just
Commissioner
on the peaks in the valley. So you said you were prepared to speak to, and I remember Commissioner DeFever, that was an issue that you raised is.
So I was going to pass
Last
this
meeting.
out and ask John to explain exactly what you're looking for.
I think there's a version of that chart in the actual sound study that might be available via a link. It doesn't have the notations that we've included in there because those are very recent, but it might also, if it's available to be put up on the screen, it might show the audience at least what you're looking at. Thanks.
So,
John, do you want to come back up and describe what they're looking at?
Just so you know, to the blue line is 60 and the red line is 65. I couldn't read that the first
Yeah,
time.
just small. If we could put the map back on the screen so I can explain what this is. Great, that's fine. That's fine. So this is location 3, L3. So if you can see it, it's right between NAL2 and NAL3. So it's the closest. Yeah, so it's L3. All of them look similar, but I took this one because I think if the commissioners looked at this, they would look at this and not know what they're staring at, but I'll try to explain it to you. In essence, what you have here is you have a half-hour window. This is between 2 and 2:30 in the afternoon. Pickleball is being played on all 4 courts, as I understand it. And what you have is noise level on the left. So you'll see the 2 lines, 60 and 65, and you'll see a bunch of jagged edges. As you look at this sheet, and I'll just hold it up, most of the time people will focus on the peaks here. And the first reaction will be, they're all pickleball. And so I took them, most of the sites will look about the same. I just took this one as an example. Literally, I did this this afternoon on a plane. If you see a C above it, that's a car on the recording. If you see a T, that's a truck. And if you see a P, that's pickleball. So in this particular location, from 2 to 2:30, there are 3, 6, 8, 9, 10, 12 events or 12 peaks that I've marked, which are all the maximum ones that you'd see across here. And 2 of them are pickleball. The rest of them are either a car or truck operation. And the car or truck operations are at the virtually the same level or close to the same level as the pickleball. They're either greater than, in most cases, they're greater than or equal to. They're in the same kind of category between the 60 and 65. So I just wanted to give you an idea of what a half hour would look like in terms of what's happening. And what's on the bottom, what's all the color is telling me from a perspective of frequency, what's happening at each location over time. So you can actually hear the events. So just to give you an idea of what's actually going on at this particular location.
Chair, may I ask a question? What constitutes a peak, right? When you see car and truck, I kind of presume that the peak is what, some kind of car revving an engine, something like that.
Or most likely it's a car movement. Or you'll have, so a good example here would be, if you look at ambient noise, it will fluctuate over time. Imagine you got birds and stuff happening, just naturally wind. And so let's say you have a car passing by or somebody starting a car, those things will change the ambient noise level. So these peaks are probably cars passing by on some nearby roadway somewhere. And that's what those events are. So it's the fluctuation in energy.
So based on the analysis you did, what do you think constitutes the peak as it relates to the pickleball?
So that would be all the pickleball peaks are related to the racket ball interaction. So it'd be somebody hitting a ball.
So for this 30-minute period where you actually only see two, assuming that that's a 30-minute period when there was actual play going on.
Yeah. So my understanding, there is 4 courts of activity during this time.
So why wouldn't there be more of these peaks representing what you just described as racket hitting ball?
It means that people were not hitting the ball as hard, or there was different interaction on the court at that point in time. So they're lower in level. So there is things happening, and I can pick out other pickleball activity, but they're down lower into the noise. They're not these I'll say, more extreme peaks.
Can I offer a alternative view? If you look at the report, which is online, not just the L3, but you actually look at L1 in the report, which is where the pickleball court actually is. You can see, right? So they're taking the measurements at L1. And if you look at that, you can actually see lots of balls being hit, as you would expect, during that 30-minute period. I've counted maybe 60 that peak,
Yep.
you know, at 80, 85, as you would expect, because you're on the court at L1. What he's showing at the same time, if I'm reading the chart right, is the readings at L3, which appear to be, I don't know, 50 feet, whatever the distance is, right, between L1 and L3. And so as sound obviously gets quieter as it travels, you're not seeing the peaks of those, right? So does that make sense?
Yeah.
They are affected by other things.
Affected by other things. Your job is safe, but so I think you can see, because they took the measurements over the same period of time from
Yep.
different locations. And so you can see what you'd expect if you're on the court, if you play pickleball and you hear the thwack, 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 you know, constantly back and forth. These guys are clearly better players than some of us. And but then what you don't see as you get to L3 is many of those hits are not as loud, and then thus they don't carry and, you know, hit the peak threshold here that they're measuring.
So you have to also think that people are oriented on the court a particular way, how they hit the ball is a particular way. All of these things factor into what is actually experienced at location 3.
So I didn't carry my thesis through, but so in theory, then if you went out to L5, L6, same period of time, you'd get different readings that were presumably lower still, further away, different angles.
That's correct.
Well, there is one for L6 in the report. And based on what it seems like on here, are those numbers are lower peaks,
Yes,
right? Yeah.
Which is
what you would
sound
expect.
materials are working, is what
Yeah.
they're
Now, in some,
Yeah,
it's
but-
possible that in some of the periods here, there's also tennis being played on these other courts as well, right?
Yeah, so these are identified peaks. So these are actually somebody listened to them, identified them as pickleball or a car or a truck or whatever it happens to be that's labeled. So,
Yeah, actually listen to the recording.
When you say interaction, you said that it's the peaks are due to the ball itself or interaction. Is that just human interaction? or-
no,
Uh,
all of the peaks that are here are related to the racket
The
hitting the
actual-
ball.
The impact of the ball.
Mhm.
And so looking at if you look at, say, it's true that there are all of these are attached to the report that are available to the public. And if you look at the other locations that you have where you haven't marked with the C, Ts and Ps.
Right.
We see peaks, but they're not necessarily all pickleball. They could be cars or trucks, or so you haven't identified those in the report.
In the report.
But you've done that here for us.
I've done that here for you so you can see it.
And again, location 1 and location 2 are actually on the pickleball court. Is that correct?
One is on the pickleball court.
Could be the loudest because it doesn't get any benefit of
Yeah.
the sound containment.
And that's
L-
evidenced by your studies.
L2 looks pretty close to the pickleball court. Am I?
It's right outside.
L2,
outside.
yeah,
Gotcha.
L2 is outside.
See, the green dots.
Yeah.
I don't see a graph for location 5. Did I not print it? Can you check the electronic version?
5 was not produced.
Okay, so-
Only because 5, I think there was some problem with the recording, so we couldn't identify what was happening.
Also, we don't have graphs for the NAL locations. Where does that data appear?
The NAL locations, I would have to pull them. I'll have to ask my staff on where they're at.
Yeah, I mean, personally, I can defer to my other commissioners. So I think that would be helpful because I think those are the ones that we added as a request in our last meeting, if I remember correctly. So the data would be nice to see the
Okay.
NAL locations and then the missing Oh, well, you said the data was unclear for location 5?
Location 5, I think that we didn't get the recordings of the data.
Right, but Commissioner DeFiva, but the NALs are farther away from the Ls that we have the data. So it's unlikely that the NALs, I mean,
They are higher up, so that could be different, but we do have data for the NA. It's not that as if we don't have any data.
oh,
for
that's
the
right.
NALs.
We have the
do
data.
have
You're right.
data.
We have the data. I'm sorry.
So we
You're
have,
right.
there's a
Yeah, yeah.
comparison to be made.
That's right.
Um,
So we have the data. That's good enough.
We just don't have the peaks and the valleys.
That's right. That's right. It's good enough then. Okay.
Is it the NAL data is in there? I thought you just said it wasn't. Am I misunderstanding?
He didn't
The
produce
NAL
them.
peaks and valleys, we hadn't did, we just picked L3 was the closest location, but we could also do the research, and I think you have the recordings on all the NALs.
I'll find them. I'll figure it out.
So what
Yeah.
we're missing is just that 30-minute window where they mapped at the same time across all the different areas. And we're missing it for L5 and NAL 1 through 4.
Mhm.
But is it fair to say you can extrapolate based upon the noise that you see here and that the peaks are, you're going to follow some sort of a pattern? It's probably mathematical to some extent to figure this out. Is that a
That's
fair-
true. Yeah.
Yeah,
So-
For
so-
example, you could say, would you expect to see for NAL2 something similar to, L2 or L3? I mean,
Yes.
your data is,
Yes. Yeah, you'll see a pattern emerge. At least that's what I saw when I was listening to the recordings. I listened to the ones at 2 and 3 and 4 and 6, and they all followed a pattern that you would expect.
Could you refresh my memory on which wall was added? Which wall was the 4th wall on the square? I just don't remember.
Just here, the one that's,
The east side?
Yep, that's right.
Okay.
Initially, we had renewals on those 3 walls, and it was the older, more reflective material. And we replaced all of it with the newer material and then added that 4th wall there, which is the one closest to L2 and L2, et cetera.
Okay, thank you. I just did not remember. And I think one of the reasons we asked for those different NALs was we were concerned about the elevation, but also I know that I had visited the Marsh condominiums where NAL4 is located, and I was very surprised at how well you could hear the noise, considering that that's at ground level. That was really baffling to me, and I think that's one of the reasons we asked, just to see the data, just to make sure we're not missing something, to be very.
The new material installed.
Well, I drove around, and unfortunately, every time I drove around, no one was playing pickleball, so I've been trying.
So when the public is talking, I'd love for them to be at the mic chair, because otherwise we don't
Sorry,
get this
then we can't
recorded.
hear on the.
Yeah,
on
that's
the
why.
Web, yeah, on Zoom.
John, you can maybe point out the NAL4 data on that.
Yeah, about the improvement that we saw at NAL4, which was.
Oh, yeah. So, yeah, if you could, so the data, the public doesn't see, you might want to go to this graph on that side. But anyway, at NAL4, what we had there was a difference in level of 6 dB from the change in the material. So on the average, so that would be the middle. On table 1, it's the 46 to 40. And then if you look at the Tiburon requirements, it went down 46 to 42. So you got very high reductions, very significant reductions.
And this is why I rely on a sound engineer, because that makes no sense to me, because it's on ground level.
Right.
Anyway, just an aside. Any other commissioner questions? Anyone? No.
Well, is that, John, is that in part on that issue of the kind of horizontal nature of it? Is that in part due to that graph or that depiction you had before showing the various vectors of how the sound travels? That when it's lateral, if anything, you'd expect that it would dampen the most, perhaps, because
It dampens the most because the barrier is the most effective at that point. So the barrier is having a greater effect because the barrier is actually between the players and the building.
And when you were on Marsh Road, Commissioner DeFever, before, we only had 3 of the
Yeah.
sides up. So now the
Oh.
fourth
Fourth
side,
one's up.
you may not have been able to see or hear people playing pickleball in there because all 4 sides are up and it's quieter as well.
So I understand adding the fourth side makes a difference, despite that wasn't the side in between the play and the Marsh Road condos, it still makes a difference.
It does, because the sound will take the weakest path. And so if nothing's there, it will go, if your barrier's here, it will go around the barrier. So if you're on this side. So when you add the fourth barrier, it takes off of that weakest path. It'll make the path length longer and you see the effect.
Okay, that's very helpful. Thank you.
John, the study that you did not include areas north of the club. Right? The various locations are all that area south and just east of it. Based on what you have done, and that is area that increasingly gets higher in elevation. Are you able to draw any conclusions based on what you did look at as far as what you'd expect that sound to be?
Yes, if it was required, yeah. We have built a computer model of this whole thing, so I could definitely predict things to the north if I needed to.
But you have not done that as.
I have not looked at that data. I focused really on the data that we had taken.
We don't have as many neighbors to the north too, so that hasn't been an area of focus for us because the houses are further away. We haven't had as many complaints from further north, and we've got the buffer of the club, like our pool probably makes more noise than the courts.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I have a couple more questions if I may. Don't go anywhere.
Okay.
And Chair DeFever, I appreciate you driving around there. It'd be really interesting to know if there actually was pickleball being played.
No, I would have heard something. I even drove right up to outside the courts. There was
Okay.
just no one playing when I was out there.
I actually did, but we can talk about it later. I
Yeah.
mean, when we come
Yeah,
back. So.
okay. So 2 questions. One, in the presentation, you had talked about the normally acceptable noise. And you had said 60 decibels, and then you said 70 decibels. And I think 60 was outdoor and 70 was playground. And so here we see numbers that are above 60, just a couple, and that those are acceptable. Can you just clarify on that? Is it 60? Is it 70? How are we interpreting?
It's both.
It's both.
Okay, so if you go to the slide which has the requirements for,
3 prior,
Yeah.
8, please.
I'll try to explain this. Okay, so you have 2 requirements or 2 items in this that we're talking about. So if you look at playgrounds, neighborhood parks, and tennis courts, that's the actual court. So that's the court itself. And you have what is normally acceptable, conditionally acceptable, and normally unacceptable, and then unacceptable. And the break point between normally acceptable and conditionally acceptable in the playgrounds, neighborhoods, and parks is 70. So you can go over to that 70 number. You see the break in the color, and that color is tied to what's on the right. So that's where the 70 comes in. That's the actual, what the Tiburon Club would be, right? And then, oh, thank you. I'll see if I can actually drive a little bit. It doesn't go on that screen because it's a computer screen. Okay, and then if you go to the residential area, which is the top one, you really have 2 requirements here, but I'm going to focus on the exterior requirement. The exterior requirement is this community noise exposure. And you'll see the break point between normally acceptable and conditionally acceptable is right at the 60 where the cursor is at. So you have 2 requirements or 2 items that you could look at.
Okay. Thank you for that. And then the second question is that you had talked about the LDNs being a measurement over a 24-hour period and an average during that period. So does that mean if pickleball is only played for 8 hours, you're averaging 8 hours of noise over 24 hours? And I apologize if you guys covered this last time. And so you're only capturing maybe a third of the noise because it's averaged over a 24-hour period? Or is that not the correct way to think of
That's
it?
not the correct way to think about it, but it is the correct way to look at the impact of the source. So the criteria is written around a 24-hour metric. This 24-hour metric is based around what you measure every hour. So in the measurements that are completed, you have 24 hours of data. The 24 hours of data is then weighted, each hour is weighted, because pickleball was only present during 8 hours, those 8 hours are weighted in the same manner as the other 16. So whatever the level is during those times, it's still being accounted for within this LDN metric. And is included. It's just only part of the time because that's the limitation of what the commissioners have allowed for the timeline to be played. So it's just compared. Now, in terms of the data that we have compared, we've also have this column, which is LAQ. So if you go to the data itself, the one that's on the left, but put it on the right, I think it's 12. No, it's not that one.
One
It's
up
10, sorry.
Two up.
There you go. So on this one, you'll see what we've done is we do have the Tiburon requirements, and that is the column that is fourth from the right. So it's the one with 62 and 63 on the top. That is the Tiburon requirements. If you go one to the left, and you see the 64, 64 at the top, these are hourly LEQ data. So now I can take, this is literally looking at pickleball, tennis activity as it relates to activity that's only present when pickleball and tennis are present. So we've actually separated it out for the commissioners to say, hey, this is pickleball here. This is the level of impact during those hours when pickleball is active. And then here is the actual criteria in the city of Tiburon, which is the next column over.
Thank you. That was very helpful. I have no further questions.
Okay, any other questions from commissioners? Commissioner Williams?
Oh, no, it's just, you said you had some recordings. Are those, is that something the commissioners are interested in, or are they, are we able to hear them? Okay.
I actually defer to kind of the numbers here, so I don't need to hear them in order to come to a conclusion.
I think it'd be hard to interpret because you'd need to hear recordings from each of the different locations and then think about what time of day that particular recording was versus any given, as it sounds like Chair DeFever was there during pickle playing hours and yet there was no noise. So do you weigh that as part of the noise? I think it'd be hard.
Anecdotally, Commissioner Amir, you said you were out there. And do you
Yeah.
have anything to share?
Yeah, sure. I was actually out there on Sunday. So that was a few days ago, actually. So during all 4 courts were actually being played on pickleball. So I was both inside, kind of the aquarium, or how we would think it would kind of feel like it's a little like an aquarium, right? Because the noise bounces. And you could definitely feel the difference from a year ago when I, toured it and there were the actual walls, because it's almost like if you've ever been in a sound studio, that's kind of the type of material we're talking about. It's kind of spongy that bounces off. So then I went to, I kind of wrote my notes. I went to basically where the NAL4 and NAL2 is. So one on the top, one kind of on the Marsh Road, right? I was actually pleasantly surprised how the noise is not that noticeable. I was standing there for a few minutes and frankly, in the NAL4 specifically, the noise of cars and trucks coming from Tiburon Boulevard were just as loud in a way, if loud is the right word, as the bounce of the pickleball. So that, again, that's my personal impression. I'm just kind of providing kind of my impression of it. So there's certainly, I felt there's certainly progress by whatever they did there. In NAL2, again, this is going a year back. I think that the fact that they added that 4th side actually makes a difference on the NAL2 because there wasn't a 4th side there initially. Now, I'm not saying there's no noise at all, but it's meaningfully less than I thought. So the numbers here don't really surprise me that it falls below the compliance or above the compliance because it's not as noticeable. So again, that's my impression of kind of walking around.
Okay, any other questions for our sound expert or anyone on the TPC applicant side? Anyone? No? Okay, next we're going to open the public hearing. And because we have a very large crowd, I'm going to limit to 2 minutes for each speaker. And this would be your opportunity if you have a question, because the applicant will have a chance to come back up after the public hearing. So if you want to throw out a question, they can note it down and then they can address it when they come back up.
And then Chair DeVito, I think
Yep.
we should mention that we did, at least myself, we did read all the emails and the notes. So there's no necessarily need to repeat, things that were sent to us.
Yeah, we are very diligent. It's a lot of reading, but we must like that. We've all been on the commission for a while. So you don't need to repeat. I mean, you're always welcome to. This is a public hearing. We're not going to tell you what to say, but can we have the clock up for 2 minutes? Okay, and we have our first person already. Please
Hi,
introduce
my-
yourself and tell us either your address or your neighborhood,
Sure.
but some kind of context.
So my name is Eric Pfeiffer, and I'm a neighbor. I live at 1683 Mar West Street, right across from the club. So I wanted to make my comment soon I'm glad I'm got to speak first because the last time that we had this meeting about pickleball, there was a lot of tension. The meeting actually, I think you guys, I'm sure remember, went till like 11 o'clock at night. There was a lot of back and forth. The commissioners had a lot of thinking and discussing amongst themselves to come up with the compromise that you came up with. And tonight, I don't think there's going to be as much conflict, and that is largely due to the fact that the club has done a good job of reaching out to us. Dave Petrini in particular and Scott Miller have been sending me emails. As Scott said when he gave his presentation, we just met with them. The neighbors just went over to the club just the other day to meet with them and discuss this idea for the indoor pickleball court, which was what we all thought was the best idea to begin with. It's the best for the people who want to play pickleball. It's an indoor thing. Colin, who we've met with as well several times, and my wife has an email chain going with, it indicates that is the best way to play pickleball. You can play it after hours. There's no wind. It's not cold. All the other things. So we neighbors are supportive, very supportive of there being an indoor court. And we think that would actually solve all of the issues with the noise and everything else. With regard to the noise mitigation and the hours from our perspective are way more important than the noise mitigation. And so since the commissioners can't, based on the Brown Act, consider the club's discussion about expanding the hours, that's why there's not going to be any contention tonight. If you were going to consider that, there would be a lot of contention. That the neighbors are not in favor of expanding the hours. We feel like we've come a long way in terms of making a compromise that is acceptable. It's still disruptive to our lives, but we find it acceptable, especially with the noise mitigation. So
Thank you. The 2 minutes have been up for a while, and wrap up that last sentence.
that's my comment, that I'm hoping that tonight is going to go fine. And if you're not going to be considering any expansion of the hours, there's no conflict.
Okay, thank you very much. Whoever would like to go next, please come up to the microphone, introduce yourself, tell us your address or your interest.
Hi there, Andrew Thompson. I have two addresses, 18 Southridge East and the Reedlands, but I'm currently staying at my apartment at 1645 Mar West. So I am actually probably quite possibly the closest resident to the subject. My north deck looks over the basketball court of the TPC. My east deck looks right over the pickleball courts, and I'm higher, so I'd theoretically be more affected. Since the last hearing, I've actually forced myself to play pickleball. to see, because I hadn't before. And I just got to tell you, it's just wonderful to see people who would normally not be doing this exercise, not exercising, creating whole new social connections and having a ball. And that's what we want to do. We want to build community here. But let's get back to the point here. I will tell you that there is a marked difference from last year. These pads have made a significant effect. And with all due respect, Madam Chair, I even would go out on my deck going, I can't believe it. What's happening? People don't play pickleball anymore. And then I look down and go, they're playing. So it's really different. So to the point of what I'd actually, and I'm not coordinated with the TPC at all, but I would actually advise them and advise you to say that our noise and everything is now within town limits. It is significantly different. What I'd like to propose to everybody is there is no problem. There is no problem here. So why create more rules around something? And I would caution the Planning Commission, you're taking yourself down a road to start manipulating and micromanaging something that's settled. It is within bounds on sound. And frankly, it should just go back to tennis hours and be
Okay.
done.
Time is up. so-
Instead of debating this every year. Just be done with it so people can move on.
All right. Thank you very much.
Thanks.
If we could hold all applause, maybe to the end of the entire meeting, we'll be here forever. And it's not fair to either side to be showing that kind of support in the middle. We're very serious about neutrality here. So please proceed.
Catherine Ma, I'm a resident, local resident and homeowner, also a member of the TPC. I just wanted to extend my support. There's also an invisible group of young working parents. Like the board member mentioned, I work past 5 most of the time, but it's really nice. I thought that was reasonable to have it, especially during the longer days. It's kind of my only chance to get out and see friends and be social. Even get out with the kids, and it's a really nice sport for all sorts of ages, but I'm here mostly for extending hours. I haven't really played since the regulations back in March. And there are dozens of my friends who couldn't make it tonight because they have young kids and it's dinner hour and witching hour. So thank you very much. And I'd love to see the extended hours back.
Thank you very much. Anyone else? Who's next? Hello.
Hi, my name is Amy Davis. I live at 1659 Mar West. Pickleball is super fun. I love the TPC. I really appreciate all the thoughtfulness everyone in this room is taking. 3 questions. How do I get on the invite list for the neighborhood meeting? I'm your neighbor. Can someone put me on it? Okay. If pickleball were to move indoor, would it also continue to be outdoors? So would there be both indoor and outdoor? And then last question is, for the sound studies, my house is right at NAL2. I saw I was there the day you guys did the study. Our property goes up the hill. So the photo we saw isn't flat, it's like a cone. And it seems like there may be a little bit of an amphitheater effect. Because in my property, which goes up probably 60 or 80 feet, at the top part of my property, there's a deck. And I wonder if you've done any sound testing at the elevation, not just the street level, because it does seem different at the street level versus like our back deck.
Okay, so hold the answer till you're back up. Okay.
Those are my 3 questions.
Okay.
Okay, should I stay here or go?
Well, you have 38 more seconds.
I
if
have
you'd
no
like to
more, I have no
continue.
more questions.
Okay.
Okay.
You're-
Does someone
yes,
want to
you're free
answer my question?
They're going to answer when it's their turn to come back up to the microphone.
Oh, okay. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much. Anyone else? I have a feeling there are more. Hello.
Hi, I'm Laura Cox and I live on Ridge Road. And I am an dedicated pickleball player. And I have to say, as you probably have heard before, it does build community, it builds fitness, it builds excitement again about utilizing actually the TPC, because when your kids are no longer there and you don't play tennis, then, you know, you go to the gym. So you're able to fully utilize it. And also I've met people in the TPC community that I've never met before. And then also it is a liberal guest policy. So there's people who want to play pickleball. It's easy to access and it's growing in Tiburon. We have, in nationwide, we have to have courts. Tiburon, the town is going to have to address, how do you not have a area for people to play one of the strongest growing sports in the nation and in our community. And also, because the noise studies have proved that we are under the town ordinance, then I do think it's sort of a non-issue. I think if I were to complain about my neighborhood and someone were to do sound studies there, the amount of construction noise that are there, it's incredible. And I know that living in that neighborhood. And I also think if you're moving into an area where there is a tennis club, you're expecting a certain amount of recreation to happen. And now that it's been mitigated to be under the town level, I think it is sort of a non-issue. I think the club should be able to operate as it has in the past. So that's my perspective.
Okay, thank you very much. Anyone else? Yes?
Good evening, new Madam Chairman, and members of the committee. My name is Roger Borchard, and I'm a Tiburon resident at 1496 Vistasa West Street. And in the spirit of preserving the outstanding qualities of our beautiful town of Tiburon, I'd like to make a few helpful remarks intended to be helpful and constructive on the propagation of sound generated by the TPC pickleball courts. And I have several questions that I would like to ask the consultant with respect to resolution of the signals that have been recorded. But I base my comments on my knowledge of sound propagation gained as a PhD research scientist at the U.S. Geological Survey in Stanford and as the author of a recent graduate level textbook on wave propagation and ray theory. For residents living above the pickleball courts, the loud impulsive whack sound, which I don't think we've discussed a metric yet tonight that measures that, travels directly over the barriers to the residents as indicated by the consultant. And the new barriers do nothing to impede or abate this loudest part of the sound. The sound barriers function as a megaphone to reflect and amplify, as the committee's pointed out, the sound generated on the 4 pickleball courts over the top of the barriers into the surrounding neighborhoods. In brief, the new barriers are expected, and that was indicated by the consultant, to increase the overall sound levels for residents living above the barriers because they'll be acting as a megaphone to focus that sound. And they will probably decrease it by some percentage, as has already been indicated, for residents living close and below the barriers, but the sound escaping will not be trapped. So strong evidence of the undesirable sounds generated by the Tiburon pickleball courts is provided by the 57 signatures on a petition to ban all TBC pickleball that was submitted at the public hearing on December 13th, 2023. The new barriers do nothing to abate the maximum pickleball sound levels being experienced by these residents living above the courts.
Your time is up, so if you can summarize real quick, that would be great. And then add your questions so they can note your questions.
Okay. Well, first of all, I'd like to just commend the commission and the EPC for their efforts to reduce the sound. And my questions having to the consultant have to do with what resolution was the sound recorded at? That is, what was the resolution of the time histories that are shown? Because the peaks that you were showing on those graphs have a base time difference of about, it looks to me like maybe 1 or 2 minutes. And so that suggests to me that the peaks are not really capturing the peak whack of the impulsive pickleball. They're capturing, and the metric that you're using, has already been pointed out, is an average metric. And so we're not trapping the peak impulsive level that's really bothering the neighbors. Thank you.
Can I ask you a question while you're still at the microphone?
Sure.
Are you suggesting that even in the graphs with the peaks, we're not seeing?
They're not
accurate-
resolving the peaks of the whack of the sound.
Because those are showing
Because
averages?
they've either been, the data's either been severely filtered or something to average it out. Because otherwise the base of those peaks wouldn't be as wide as it is. And and the actual pickleball whack, you would see lots more of those, and that would be a much higher frequency. And so I don't think the time histories, I assume they've been recorded digitally, I don't know, but they haven't been sampled at like 100 samples per second or something that it would require to completely resolve the peak of the pickleball whack.
Okay, commissioners, do you have any questions for the, all right, thank you very much. Oh, Commissioner Williams, did I?
Nope.
Okay, thank you very much. Next speaker, please.
Oh, I'll speak up.
Okay.
His questions were very interesting to me because they contradict my experience. I'm Cress Van Kulen. I live on Marsh Road. I live at the site of NAL 4. I would say that I think there's a fallacy in recording because that was recorded at ground level. And we are up probably a good 20 feet higher above. And someone had to tell me that the insulated walls were added to the tennis court. And I had to go down and see for myself because it made no difference to me at my location. In fact, one of my neighbors was recently renting out his condo and was spending time there getting it ready. And he got me in the parking lot and he said, "How can you stand that noise? Our doors and windows are closed because it's winter time and you can still hear it." I'm like, yeah, I know it's annoying. I'm so grateful that people love pickleball and that they've found a great outlet. And that's wonderful. I want them to play pickleball. I want them to play in an indoor court. And I just don't think that it's right for them to be able to bring a new sport to the TPC and annoy the neighbors as much as they do. And I think we came up with a good compromise last year of the limited hours. And when it comes time to make that decision, I would entirely encourage the Planning Commission to stick to the limited hours because that's a compromise that allows the neighbors some peace of mind. You know, I can have a barbecue on my deck on Sunday afternoon after 2 o'clock, and I know that, you know, I can have friends over and we won't all be annoyed by the constant ping, 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 really annoying noise. So let's behave in a neighborly way.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Dipanita Reese. I am a Tiburon resident for almost 20 years. I live at 14 Cecilia Court. And I wanted to offer a slightly different perspective, one that I have not heard here today. I came to this country when I was 6 years old, not speaking a word of English, and from a place that had no running hot water. The way that I made friends is through the tennis courts. And athletics provides something that is very, very unique to our community. It is devoid of any issues of race, gender, religion, social class, socioeconomic status, etc. Pickleball, even more than tennis, offers that in spades. It runs across community. It is a form of community building that runs across not just all of the things that I mentioned, but age in a remarkable way. It brings together children and seniors and peoples from all walks of life. I have 4 children that I have raised in Tiburon. I'm still raising a couple of them. And one of the issues that I have seen over time is that kids do not go out and play anymore. They are stuck on their screens. And the TPC offers an incredibly unique place where children, in a place where we have mountains and hills and not necessarily conducive to the old days of running around, TPC offers a very important place to do just that. Pickleball is a very unique way children play with adults, and they play willingly, and it gets them off screens. I would encourage you to not just allow this conditional use permit, but to do it with expanded hours for people like me who work for a living and who work very hard at very long hours. We cannot show up all the time by 5 o'clock, and the Sunday hours are particularly problematic. Sunday is the one day where we do enjoy things like pickleball with our families. So I understand the Brown Act notice, but to the extent that you can push or you can accept TPC's proposition to extend those hours at some later date, I would highly encourage you to do it because it offers a way to build community that is incomparable, in my opinion, to anything else out there.
Thank you.
Hi.
Hello, please state your name. and
Yeah,
your
I'm
address.
Judy Schulman, and I'm at 1496 Vistaza West. I have a question, and that is that I think it was brought up that they didn't do any of the sound. First of all, it was requested by you at the last meeting that they do part of their sound study up the hill. And he, I think, said that they didn't do it north of the hill, north of the club, up that hill. I'm not sure why, and I want to ask a question, why what wasn't done up that hill? Because that's where we are, and that's where we're hearing the sound, and that's where it's amplified. And if they will be doing that, I think it'd be very important to get that study.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Hi, good evening. My name is Zainab Akon. I live at 1711 Vistaza Street West, right north of TPC, above that hill. So there's that open space right in front of us. And I've been living on Vistaza West since 2011. I love the area. I love TPC, the neighborhood, everything is lovely. But the fact is, sound travels. And it travels, I think, more than we realize. Because over the years, like my bedroom is at least 150 feet away from the curb of the street. And if people are walking on a phone, talking on the street at like 7 a.m., I can hear their conversation from my bed when even the door is like slightly open. So, I mean, in terms of the TPC activities, you know, the activities have grown and the space looks great over the years. There's the, you know, children's playground and different activities going on. And I see everything. I see all of the club and it's wonderful. I'm all for sports and the community building and all the activities. However, listening to all the wonderful information given to us this evening, the way the sound measures were made and the time of day, like in the afternoon. Tiburon is a quite quiet town. In the afternoon, like when the workers come into town, you know, like the noise levels start going up. By lunchtime, it's lively, it's happening. There's all kinds of noises, whether it's the trucks, cars. I mean, it's busy time of today. So if you're like measuring sound at like 2:30 in the afternoon, that's when there's everything going on in town possible, like people are out, cars are out. And then how much you hear of the tennis courts or whatever is happening at the TPC outside, you hear much less of that. But when the town starts becoming quiet, as the workers are leaving, you know, cars are lining up on Tiburon Boulevard, it's 5 p.m. And then the town, actually like the old Tiburon where we are, gets quieter. When you have that like more quiet time after 5 p.m., the noise coming from TPC, even if it's just the lights on and tennis is going on, like you hear it. There is more sound present coming from TPC after 5 p.m. Not just because it's not because they're making more noise after 5 p.m. It's because the town is becoming more quiet after 5 p.m.
Okay,
So
time is up, so please wrap up.
so I would really appreciate it. The sound studies that have been done at the level of the club, I think portray different results, would portray different results if those evaluations were done from high above Vistazo Street West or anywhere in between, the results would be different. It's just because TPC is in the valley, but I would love to see those results if
Okay.
that's at all possible.
Okay,
Thank you.
you.
I just want to point out, I live on Cecilia Way,
And
closer
state your
to-
name, please.
I'm Paige Fassig.
Okay.
Sorry. And everybody's complaining about sound and whatnot. I live right by the Cove Shopping Center. Every weekend, I hear Strawberry baseball games going on. They have jumpies going on. I think it's wonderful that we have a lively, active surrounding. And I think you just have to consider that that's part of life now. We live where we're all growing. There's more people. And so it's not going to be quiet. That's just my point of view. Because I sit in my backyard and I can hear the music, you know, from Strawberry Point. Anyways, that was it.
Okay, thank you.
Hello, I'm Jeff Thomas, 24 Marsh Road. And I want to thank TPC for working with us on helping to mitigate things, but I wanted to point out that I still hear the racket sports, especially pickleball, in my condo with the doors closed, everything. And I think that the hours that were agreed to are good. I would like to not see them increased. And I think we need to take a better look at it, a real good one, and take a look at the acoustic studies, because there's a lot of intricacies of acoustics and you need to understand it a little better and get a different viewpoint, I think. And I'm not anti-pickleball. I think it's great and I think it's wonderful, but I just really like to preserve our serene home the way we bought it. So that's what I have to say.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Yes.
Hello, I'm Neil Toft. I'm a resident at Marsh Road for about 30 years. And I have talked on this issue in the past. I'm not directly affected by the pickleball noise, but I've certainly noticed the change in the ambiance, even being up on top of Tiburon Ridge, being able to hear the pickleball up there, not loud, but notable above the din of the whole bay around you and the town below. One thing I just wanted to emphasize, I'm glad that Tiburon Point, they're working with the neighborhood, and it sounds like they're working towards improvements. But one thing to remember is the sound study really focuses on decibels and peaks and things that are part of what make up noise regulations. I've worked in planning. I've enforced noise regulations. Light and glare, these are very difficult things to measure. And this is part of the reason you have this as a conditional use permit process, because that gives you more discretion to really look at substances that are beyond exactly what's measurable. And as you know, from the town's own study of its pickleball courts out at Tether Park, that was I think a broader study that really recognized the nature of pickleball as being a sound that is somewhat abrasive. It's staccato, And so it's just, I think I totally appreciate the outdoors and activity. I grew up going to a tennis club in Mill Valley. I think you've got a big challenge here, but that's why this is and I'd like to let the members know who are really here to encourage the expansion of the hours, is across the country, as you know, the pickleball is a very challenging activity for this reason, and these are difficult decisions. But the
Wrap up your
nature,
thought, your
yeah,
time is up.
thank you. The nature
Okay.
of this is more than just decibels and peaks. And thank you for your time.
Thank you. Anyone else? Okay. Yes.
Hi, my name is Leila Vogus. I'm a neighbor and member of TPC. I live at 1735 Vistazo West, so right above the club. I love the noise. I think it's a vibrant community. When we moved here, we were delighted to be able to walk to TPC, to have our family walk to TPC. We can also hear the music from Friday nights on Main and when there are cultural events here at the library and town hall, and we can hear the swim meets, and it's lovely. This is a community that's alive, it's young, it's athletic, it's out there. Yes, we can hear the noise, but that's part of what makes Tiburon, Tiburon. I can hear it, and yet I am supportive of expanding the hours so that people can play at a tennis club that's intended for tennis and swimming and pickleball.
Okay, thank you. We have.
I'll make this very brief. My name is Kari Cusack. I also live right above the hill, and I just concur with everything that she just said. And I'm very supportive, and I like to expand the hours.
Okay, thank you.
Hi, I'm Teresa Topel. I live 2155 Paradise Drive. And I just wanted to say, agreed with everything of how pickleball is important for the neighborhood, the community, the children. It is fun to see men, women, children, everyone playing together. Mostly it's for the hours for me to expand. As a working person, I can't play after 5. And mainly it's freezing in Tiburon. So usually everyone's deck or they're not outside too much. We're outside freezing, playing, which is fun. But other than that, I would say I'd like to see the hours extended just for the working people who don't get home until 6. But thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Robert Chang. I live on 16 Cecilia Court, right next to Dipanita. My only 2 points are living up there, which is far from TPC. I can actually hear everything on Blackies. I can hear their soccer games. And I just always thought that the noise that travels in a community like ours is just part of the community. And I'm not mitigating any of the issues that the actual neighbors have. And then the second part is to echo as someone with a full-time job and not having access to play at any time, I would appreciate to use the club as it was intended. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Okay, if we have no one else in the audience, we will turn to whether we have any public comments from our online audience.
I don't have any hands raised at the moment, but if we can just give it a moment for people to figure it out.
Yes.
That would be great. Thank you.
Okay, we'll take a pause.
I still do not have any hands raised, Chair.
Okay, I think it's safe to assume everyone has spoken who would like to speak in the public comment period. So I'm going to close the public hearing. Should we leave time for commissioner questions? I think we would have asked our questions
Or the
during
applicant,
yeah, so applicant next, because we would have asked our questions during the comments. All right, so the applicant has 5 minutes for their quote unquote rebuttal. And if you can try to address all the questions that you received, that would be great. We might need to give you a little more than 5 minutes since there were quite a few questions.
Would it be possible to get the map back up there? Could we try that? Share screen with the map again, because
This will be like an Oscar speech version of responding to questions. First of all, Eric Piper, shout out. No, I'm kidding. You want to, so, there were many. We'll give you a
One
second.
second.
Can you give us a minute to set
Of
up your
course.
map and stuff? Thank
John, you
you.
want to pull up a chair also so you can be heard? I think you might be more qualified than me to answer some of these. All
We have a panel around the microphone.
right.
Thank you. I appreciate that because online they can't really hear if you're too far from the microphone. So this is great. We have a panel near the microphone. Are we ready, Dina? Okay, we are ready for answers to questions.
Great. I just would, this is Scott. I would just start off by saying, I think I would kind of echo Eric's comments about what a different feel and vibe this meeting has compared to the last one. You've heard different opinions, but overall a really positive and construction goal, which is let's try to figure out a way to, continue all the benefits of pickleball in the community while still being sensitive to the impact on the surroundings. And that's been our goal and our real focus for the last several months. And I think today's a testament that hopefully we're achieving that goal. So I'm not sure if we'll get exact answers to all the questions. We're going to give it a shot in our Oscar kind of acceptance speech format. As far as Eric's commentary, we're all supportive of an indoor solution. We definitely will continue to engage with the members. Obviously, there's a difference of opinion between neighbors and members on hours of operation. I think you heard plenty of that discussion. As far as Andrew's comments, he's also a very close resident. No questions. Oh, as far as questions, Amy Davis had a question about the impact of sound as it goes up the hill. In the second, and I'll maybe allow John to talk to this, but we installed 2 sensors at a residence, the Piper residence, actually outside at L5 and L6. And these were higher up the hill, and it was intended to also measure a little bit of what the sound would be like as it traveled up. Now, we didn't have any sensors on Vistaza West in the first study, and we didn't have any in the second study. And I'll let John opine on kind of his thoughts on L5 and 6 and what maybe the experience might extrapolate to up the hill.
Yes, you have a couple of effects happening when you go up in level. So you have a distance effect. So you're getting further away from the source. So typically you see a reduction in sound, but you also have a different angular relationship to the energy. And that could cause things to be different, as some people have explained in their experience. In terms of L5 and L6, those are in different elevations, and you actually do see a reduction in level. And I'll point to the commission to look at the center of this LEQ, which is actually the pickleball activity. That is the middle. So on the left screen, it's the middle column, and you'll see the 2 numbers where there's no first number. 50 is L5, 46 is L6. And so you'll see there's an actual reduction in level between L5 and L6 as you move up as you increase in elevation. And that's the distance effect that's been having greater effect than the actual angular and the radiation pattern of the pickleball itself.
And then can we go back to the map? The question came up from the couple that is on the north of TPC. We did do a measurement at NAL1, which is an
Speak into the microphone a little bit.
Excuse me. Yeah. We did do a measurement at NAL1, which is the apartments that sit up above TPC. So that's an elevated position as well. It's not all the way up the top of the hill over there, like this, they were asking about, but I feel like we've kind of like, we're playing within the rules that the town of Tiburon has. We've spent a lot of money to analyze this, and we've done multiple elevated locations. You can see that L5 to L6, we're seeing a reduced impact on sound. I'd almost like, we can't just keep doing more and more of these measurements at every address. If people wanted to do their own, we could analyze them and meet with our sound engineer, but we just can't keep hitting every address. But I think we've shown that there is a reduced impact as you elevate. One of the other questions, and let's get John's on this, is the resolution of sound. This is definitely above my intelligence, but the 1 to 2 minutes peaks and whether we were.
Yeah, so the question was really about the resolution of the energy as it was taken and as it was graphed for you. All the resolution samples are 1 second samples. So they're 1 second, every second there's a piece of data. The audio recordings are 1 second, or I'll say continuous. What you see on the paper is 1 second resolution. The audio recordings are continuous.
So we're getting down to the last few seconds here.
It's okay. I know if you haven't answered all the questions, don't worry.
That was, I think those were the primary questions. The question about indoor facility, as Scott addressed, we have budgets for it that would require a member vote, and it would be very tough to get at this point. But we are very committed to trying to do it. I know I shouldn't be a pessimist. We are trying to get there, but it's expensive. But yeah, so the reasons we're here today are to one, make assured that we will be able to continue playing pickleball and also continuing to invest in our pickleball courts. One of the things we want to do is kind of spread the courts out and actually move 2 of them even closer to a wall, which I'm, again, not a sound expert, but I would think the closer to the wall, the less sound you're going to have escape. So, and then, we've talked about the hours. It sounds like we may or may not be able to get that approval today. But, I can sympathize with the neighbors. I live above Del Mar. I have lived above Del Mar for 14 years and I hear aluminum bats. There were aluminum bats when I moved in. I hear them today. It's just the music of the area. As some of the people were speaking, I did some quick Zillow searches to see when they purchased their home. 3 of the people that spoke against pickleball or against the hours purchased their homes after we started playing pickleball. So just got to be careful with that in your position. Of course, people coming in and trying to change what was existing there. We're here to work with them. I don't want it to be combative, but just something I was doing on a quick Zillow search.
All right. Any final summation thoughts? We'll give you maybe another minute since most of your rebuttal was eaten up by questions. Or is that?
No, I think hopefully, as I said, we've invested a lot of time and energy to try to make it a better environment for everyone involved. We're definitely hearing it from the membership that the hours are very constraining for some, and that's the main ask of us today in terms of what the go forward looks like. And eventually, we'd love to have a permanent indoor facility that can be multi-use, where pickleball can be a part of it, and it can be open to as many folks as possible. So that's our long-term goal, and we're still working very much towards that.
Okay, thank you. Commissioners, any questions while the applicant is still sitting in a nice panel in front of us? Anyone? Erica, you look like you're thinking of one.
Yeah.
No? Okay, thank you very much. We really appreciate the thoroughness, the attention to the questions. All right. All right, so I will close the public hearing and bring it back for discussion amongst the commissioners. Would anyone like to start with their thoughts? How about Commissioner Amir?
Sure. Thank you. So I was here a year ago, of course, as well. And if I date back, I was here when the TPC wanted to do their lighting on the tennis courts, and some of us were here too. So that might date me a bit on the commission. First of all, I really thank kind of the residents who've come up here and pickleball impacts their life in a way, the noise. So I respect that. I do think that we try to kind of build a community here that everybody shares their thoughts openly, and these are difficult decisions that we sometimes need to make here on the commission, but we respect everybody's view. I'm in the opinion that look, I'm no sound expert, and I don't think it's our role in the planning commission to question people that this is their livelihood to perform these type of studies, and to question the methodology or how it's measured, et cetera. I think that that is above what we should be doing. Therefore, I rely on data. And the way I see the data is that the TPC has made meaningful improvement in the past year in terms of noise mitigation, and all the measurements are far below 60. So even if there's a situation here that one of the homes, one of the neighbors complained that maybe is higher up and didn't measure, I mean, we're looking at things between 46 and 52. So I mean, the likelihood that that's above 60, I think, is very, very low. And frankly, there's a reason why we have ordinance. And the ordinance is clear, and the TPC or the pickleball meets the ordinance. And I think that we need to really frame that, and stick kind of by the rules that we have in town. Because if we don't, then there's no end to it. This could be, there's obviously other issues that people can complain about. I do think that they made significant investment to add this fourth side on the courts, and also the new material. Frankly, if I look a year back when we kind of told them to go back to the drawing board, I think they've actually done above and beyond in my expectation of what it could actually do in order to improve. And spending $165,000 is not insignificant. The last point is look, I measure, we've had a lot of controversy here over the years of things that come here. And I think that the way we look at it is neighbor feedback. And for me, the fact that there's been no complaints to the TPC or to the town in the past year is big for me, meaning that I don't think that this is that big of an issue. I would be very supportive in kind of this application. With regards to the hours, I'm actually open to it. I know this is not being discussed now, but I would actually be open in modifying the hours potentially as well if we decide as a commission to discuss that. So thank you, Commissioner Spear.
Thank you, Commissioner Amir. And we move to Commissioner Woodward.
I have a couple of clarifying questions, if I might, for the director. We had heard one of the speakers say that back in December 2023, I think that there were 61 people who had signed a petition talking about not wanting the noise or not wanting pickleball. And then, today we've gotten a number of letters and a number of people talking here, but you had made the comment that there had been no calls or letters or anything from, I guess, the kind of December timeframe or the approval of this conditional use permit until now. Is that correct? Did I hear that correctly?
So the December meeting, we then had another meeting in March because of some noticing issues. I just want to remind the commission of that. But yes, in December, you did receive a petition of opposition. I have not personally received any phone calls, and I'm not aware of anybody in my staff that has, or letters with respect to noise. And I will say that sometimes that is an indicator and sometimes it's not, because they're not asking. I don't know what, all I can say is I haven't received anything. I'm not sure what it actually means.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you. I just wanted to confirm that I heard that correctly. And then a second question, and again, since maybe I missed the December one and abstained in the March one, but why are we doing a conditional use permit? Is pickleball not part of the uses that are permitted in the existing conditional use permit for the TPC?
That's right. So tonight you're not actually doing a conditional use permit. You're simply accepting the report that was required by you, that we come back to you showing that there have been improvements. This is what's been done, additional studies. You did do a conditional use amendment to add pickleball because it was not a use at the time of the original conditional use permit, which is totally understanding because Nobody played pickleball at that time. So
Sorry, so to clarify, the conditional use permit on the TPC that exists today and I guess has maybe since 1948 or since
whatever, yeah.
whenever we were incorporated. It is specific as to what sports can be played to the letter, and anything that's different than that has to come back here for.
It's very specific, and I think it had to do with kind of what was going on at the time. I have no clue, but yes, it is specific. So what we did, because pickleball was not a sport which was listed as an approved sport, the option for the TPC was to request an amendment to the conditional use permit, which is what was approved in March, with the conditions, one of the conditions being that they come back within 180 days. Also, there's a condition in the resolution that allows you to modify hours. That could mean more or less restrictive. It doesn't indicate what that means.
So just for my clarity, my sanity,
I can't help you with that.
Well, we're gonna find out. Was bocce ball on the list, or do they need to come back and get a conditional
I
use?
can't tell you whether bocce ball was on that list.
Frisbee throwing,
I'm
football in the yard. I'm trying to understand. I'm certainly
There
not.
was swimming, there was tennis, there was special hours for swimming, special hours for lessons, tennis hours, how you can or can't leave doors open with respect to noise in the neighborhood. I mean, the conditional use permit was pretty specific to a lot of activities occurring, number of events you could have a year, that kind of thing. So
I mean, it'd be helpful as we look at this to come back and revisit that more broadly, because again, there are lots of activities that get taken place down there. And if it's going to be to every single one requires additional permission line by line versus, outdoor activities, which it would seem this comes to my third point and one that Commissioner Ramirez raised. It would seem that the Tiburon noise ordinance would govern the issues that would come with new sports. So if bocce ball happened to be shot out of a cannon and it was particularly loud, that would be a problem, not because it was bocce ball, but because it exceeded the noise ordinance. At least that would be kind of my perspective. But anyways, thank you for clarifying that, Director. I appreciate it.
I hope you're more sane now. Are we helping you?
Give me an hour, we'll see. So I guess, from my perspective, I do take comfort if I were one of the people that had felt not excited about pickleball and the noise and the issues back in December, and again had shown up in February or March and had issues. And then, now 10 months later, and I hadn't called once, hadn't raised any issues during that time, it would seem that the work that the TPC has put forth had been working. And certainly seems at least a positive remedy. I'm also not a sound engineer, as evidenced by the questions I asked. But it's all we have to go on. And what I can read is, charts and data, and at least you could see year over year, period over period, that the data was getting better. Presumably they didn't, mess around with the things that were reading them, whatever they're called. And so we can only rely on that. And you can also see, like, at the different locations, the further away they were, the higher up they were, the less and less the sound was evident. And so I would sort of echo, no pun intended, Commissioner Ramirez's comment that the sound is likely to be even less in some of the other areas that were people spoke about in the locations. And I was trying to follow along, and everyone who gave me an address, I did map it. I did try to look at where it was. I did try to compare it to the NAL zones. And I also Zillowed I actually looked not to see when people bought, but to see when the houses were. And I couldn't find any houses that were actually built or existed before the TPC. So to some extent, I feel like whether you built or you bought, there is a known, you're living at a canyon. If you're living up there, you're living over whether it's an amusement park or an outdoor playground. And you do have to rely to a great extent on the Tiburon noise ordinance. And I guess the last question, maybe I'll come back to you, Director, since my sanity is still quite there. I'm not clear why we can't opine on the hours of the conditional use permit, given that in the past, there was a conditional use permit being requested and we changed the hours, we modified the hours. And we've done the same for other conditional use permits recently, one downtown Tiburon. So what makes this different that we wouldn't be able to suggest modified hours?
I'm going to let the attorneys handle that one.
That makes it sound really big. It was agendized as you receiving the report. And that's sort of in line with the condition. We said you receive the report, status report, 180 days, and then you can decide if you want to make modifications. If we had included in the agenda title, you know, receive the report and consider modifications too, we could have done that. But as it is agendized, it is receive the report and direct staff, you know, as to the next step. So the way you could frame it is you can discuss some of the changes that you are considering and you know, would like to make. And so you can then, you know, move to receive the report and direct staff to bring back an item to consider changes to amendments or modifications to the use permit. So it does put it through 2 meetings, but that's with the Brown Act. I mean, I just sort of the legally defensible position is that we try to align ourselves with how it was agendized, like written in the agenda itself. So that's how we're approaching it.
Okay.
We can discuss it now, but
You-
we're going to need to discuss it again after it's noticed at the
Yes.
following meeting that was noticed.
And in that, and then you can, all the modifications you want to make could be in that meeting. You can discuss if you want to make modifications, if that's something everyone agrees that, you know, this is worth amending or considering modifications, you can direct staff to do that at, you know, as part of receiving this report.
Okay, so thank you for that clarification. Sounds like we might be back here, but so then, you know, from my perspective, as I've aligned with the mayor, Commissioner Amir, on many of the topics, it does seem like it meets the requirements as we've set out for conditional use permits in Tiburon broadly. As far as we know, it seems to comply with the sound ordinance based upon the data that we have in front of us. From an hours perspective, as we get into discussing that, I'll just lay out my perspective. I thought the last time we got pretty prescriptive and fairly arbitrary in terms of the hours, like why part day Sunday and no Monday versus half a day Wednesday and no Thursday. And ultimately, to me, I just take great comfort in, you know, whoever came up with the original conditional use permit back when they, I clearly wasn't here, put the TPC in place and allowed it and permitted it and structured it for outdoor activities and play and the like, which included tennis sports, which, by the way, I'm not going to argue, but possibly in 1948, the tennis rackets were a little louder than they are today. And so ultimately for me, I would be in favor of supporting the conditional use permit and the extension of it or putting it in permanent place. And then for me, again, I would align the hours with the racket sports that already exist under the original conditional use permit.
Okay, thank you, Commissioner Woodward. Commissioner Sy.
You know, in this 180-day review, the issue that has been most important for me tonight is to look at what has changed and what hasn't. And I think that based on what we heard tonight, one of the things that clearly has changed is the collective effort by TPC on the one hand to make real concrete changes, and effort that's been made by the neighbors to work with TPC and vice versa. And I think that everyone's to be commended in that regard. I find that the changes that TPC made are not just meaningful in the sense that they have improved on a decibel level, maybe it's 4 or -3 here. It's that it demonstrates to me in this time period that we have given TPC that they have clearly invested not just money, but also money, but real time and engagement to do what I had hoped would happen during that time period is a real establishment of a relationship with the surrounding neighbors who are very important to this process, to make sure that what we end up with is not ultimately going to be a perfect solution, at least not today, but is a solution that is durable, that is reasonable, and that recognizes that everyone has an important interest here. I think TPC has done it. I took the view before that I thought the hours that were being considered when this CUP amendment was under consideration were at the time reasonable. I voted in favor of the compromise solution that was being discussed because it was clear to me that that was the solution that was going to get to ultimately approval for pickleball to continue to be played, which is something that I thought was the right thing to do. I continue to think it's the right thing to do because what has changed are those things I mentioned. What hasn't changed are the reservations that continue to be held by the neighbors who are in the surrounding area. And those reservations continue to be very important. What I'm confident about is that TPC is going to continue to work with the neighbors on continuing to improve the conditions that exist because the consequences are rather dire if they don't. So I actually have no concerns about that. I actually think we're only going to get better as opposed to the opposite. I think not only can we talk about the issue of hours, and so I disagree a little bit with some of the comments that have been made to the extent they suggest that we cannot discuss it. I don't know that anyone actually suggested that at all specifically. I think we can discuss it. I think we should discuss it. I'm prepared to make a motion to direct staff to prepare recommendations for the expansion of hours and to provide to us what I agree with council would be another meeting that we would do, agendized properly in that regard, for us to vote on, consider, of course, first, and then vote on a modification that would expand the hours. And as to the hours, in expanding it, it would likely result in more play happening. But I think that there was something important that one of the TPC representatives talked about, which I think to me is important too, is we do need to be a little nimble in how we think about the hours. I think it was described before as kind of an hours that would be seasonal. And I think that even with the proposed hours, which again, we won't be voting on tonight, but those proposed hours that were put up there are even themselves, as I saw it, and I kind of tried to do some research as to when the sun goes down during the course of the year, they are still not within the range, but actually earlier than when the sun actually goes down. To me, that is indicative, which is what we want, for an entity that's obviously been around Tiburon a long time, recognizing that it's got to work with the neighbors. And I think it is, in that regard, a fair compromise that when we ultimately vote on it, and if it's approved, would accomplish that particular goal. So I will make that motion and ask for a second. Again, that motion being a motion to direct staff to provide a recommendation on the expansion of hours for our next available meeting to be able to consider and then vote on such a recommendation from staff.
I think if we can hold on the second, we still need to hear from Commissioner Williams and then myself, but we can leave it on the table, right? Okay. And then if we need you to restate it, which we probably will, we're going to forget everything you just said.
I hope someone was recording it because
Thank you, Commissioner Sai and Commissioner
Yeah,
Williams.
very well said, Commissioner Sai. Yeah, so I look at tonight's meeting. I agree that we can have this conversation about our feelings about expanded hours, but I do sort of also see this as our chance to determine whether or not the TPC has been in substantial compliance with the conditions that we set forth at the last meeting and met the requirements that we asked and the requests really that we asked of you. And I think it's without question clear that the TPC has, I agree with Commissioner Ramirez, has really gone above and beyond in that regard. And so I just wanted to commend, everyone who has worked on this because a lot of time and a lot of money clearly has been invested in the effort. And so I'm very appreciative of the seriousness with which you took the discussion we had at the last meeting, and also really grateful and and want to commend the neighbors who really actively participated in this process. It's striking to me that there's total consensus that the hours that we did, sort of the compromise hours that we came up with have worked. No one here has said that that those are problematic. You know, and that I think, as someone noted, there's not a problem tonight, you know, in terms of our review of the conditions and the requests that we made at the last meeting. You know, I also would be in favor of considering expanded hours at the next meeting. I think Commissioner Sai said it, he's so eloquent, and I won't be able to say it as eloquently, but I think there's I sort of don't want to be prescriptive tonight into what hours specific hours I would support. I think there's such good work being done between the TPC and the neighbors and the impacted neighbors and community members to find the right compromise. And I sort of invite these meetings to continue and this effort to continue, and for that effort to guide us as we're contemplating expanded hours. But I'm comfortable saying I do feel as though the seasonal, a seasonal sort of schedule makes a certain amount of sense to me. The fact that many people are going back to the office and they're getting home later, and so they're really constrained by the hours that we came up with, a year ago. And so that's something that I'd be supportive of going forward. I think tonight, I'm also mindful of the fact that the staff report very clearly said that there wasn't a request for expanded hours tonight. So to the extent the public is reading that and they're not participating, I'm respectful of that. I think that's, everyone has said things that I largely agree with. Just wanted to add a few comments.
Thank you, Commissioner Williams. Going last means that most of the really intelligent comments have already been made. I actually like being the chair because I can rely upon my very intelligent co-commissioners. I do have some added thoughts. I do want to add back something that I discussed in March, which was touched on. The averaging of the sounds, I think, is really problematic because the sound is staccato and happens in spikes. Now, whether when that is below the 60 decibels cutoff, that's nice. That's very nice. We appreciate that, but it doesn't mean it's not annoying. My partner and I have lived across from a construction project for several years now. It just never ends, and we're over time, it wears you down. So it's one thing to have a construction project across the street with consistent hammering or whatever it is over 60 decibels for a shortened period of time, and it's going to end. And we all have, as a community, a tolerance for that. We know that our neighbors need to finish their project. We don't want to stop them from improving their home. But when we're looking at improving, at changing and adding hours to something that may create really ongoing construction noise. It's not exactly the same, but ongoing staccato. This is why the hours are so important. And I think at the meeting where we considered the hours, I would like for us, when we're considering the hours again, to really hear from the neighbors and encourage the TPC to really listen to that feedback, because they need a break. The people who live in the bowl around need a break. I'm hearing that they're very cooperative. They want people to enjoy pickleball. They want people to enjoy the TPC. It's part of their community too. But I would like to add that despite that the sound studies look very detailed, I think not intentionally, but that it glosses over that added element of the staccato popping noise that I, personally would not want to hear all the time myself. It's definitely louder than tennis. No one has argued that it's not, and we covered that very well in our meeting in March. So I wanted to remind of that. The averaging really doesn't represent what that is like. And despite the fact that it technically falls under the guidelines of the ordinance, it doesn't mean it's not different. This is a different sport. Just because other sports fell under the guidelines and we don't get a lot of feedback or complaints doesn't mean we shouldn't pay attention to a new sport as a different style sound. So I just want to keep us aware of that while we're considering changing hours and we are listening to you. When you bring us feedback, we always encourage the neighbors to bring feedback, and please work with the TPC. I want to commend the TPC for doing that work. We're hearing from some of the neighbors to the TPC that they really appreciated that, and they have felt as a part of this process. And thank you for that. That is really wonderful. That is Tiburon community, building. We love to hear that, at the Planning Commission especially, because that's why we live in Tiburon. We really hope that everybody can work together, and we have that small community feel, and we like to retain that in a friendly way. I wanted to highlight that. And then, so when we do bring up the hours again, keep that in mind, that I don't think the sound study really represents the true nature of pickleball. Let me see, I made some notes here. We appreciated neighbor feedback. I talked about that. Yeah, no, my commissioners do such a thorough job, my co-commissioners, touching all of the points. I'm not going to belabor them. I really agree with so many of the things that my co-commissioner said. The review of this conditional use permit, it's going well. It looks like it's going well. People have listened to what we have instructed them to do and bring back more information. And Commissioner Williams said, is it in substantial compliance? I agree. And I think they did go above and beyond Commissioner Amir's words. Absolutely. I'm very happy with that. So those are my comments. Oh, one final thing I see in my notes. When we consider hours, I like that the TPC is raised and they're cooperative in this way. Seasonally, we can work with the seasons. We're not talking about setting hours for the same all year long. We can work with the seasons to try to help for more play when it's still light out, but also balance that for maybe what the neighbor feedback is that we're getting. So that would be my comments. You still want to make a motion to add that we will.
Can I read the motion that I thought Commissioner Sai made, which is, I added just one section, which is the motion to receive the status report and direct staff to bring back an item considering an amendment to the TPC conditional use permit regarding the expansion of pickleball hours. That was
Yeah.
a mouthful, but is that
That is fair.
okay?
I'll second.
Wait, so, sorry.
So Commissioner Sai
you
made
read
that,
it?
yeah.
Can you read it again?
Yes.
Sorry.
So it's a run-on sentence, sorry. Motion to receive the status report and direct staff to bring back an item considering an amendment to the TPC conditional use permit regarding the expansion of pickleball hours.
Okay, I understand.
So receive the status report, direct staff to bring back an amendment to the CUP regarding the expansion of pickleball hours. You could modify that as you would like. That was just what I thought, Commissioner Sai.
That motion works.
Okay.
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 I'll second.
Have a
I'm
second?
okay with it.
All right, we have a second, so let's take a roll call vote. Commissioner Williams,
Aye.
Commissioner Sai,
Aye.
and I also say aye. I think it's very nice. And Commissioner Woodward.
Aye.
All right, we have a unanimous. Oh, sorry. Sorry, the repetition of the people who already moved is going to get me. Thank you, Commissioner Amir, for catching me. We have a unanimous, we have 5 ayes. Thank you very much. And I think unless staff has anything else we need to talk about, I think.
I do not.
All right, meeting is adjourned. Thank you, everyone, for your attention.
First meeting in the books.
That's great. It's been so long since we've all been here.
It's been easily a year. I was thinking about it. When I showed up, I was like, wait, am I instead of someone? Because usually we